Okay, all right. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call the Planning Board meeting to order. This is the May 16th, 2023 Planning Board meeting. My name is Kathy Barnard, and I'm going to introduce the other Planning Board members. Starting down at my left is Steve Webster, who is an alternate. Sitting next to Steve is Von Dugan, then Peter Goodwin and Roger Murray. Doug Breskin is the vice chairman. To my right, John Thurston and Jane, I forgot your last name, I'm sorry.
Nielsen.
Nielsen.
Like
I didn't write it down. Okay. Jane Nielsen, who is also an alternate, and then Brad Harriman, who is a representative from the Board of Selectmen. And sitting next to Brad is Julie Jacobs, who is also an alternate. But we have 7 members, so we're pretty much set. Okay, the first item on the agenda is an opportunity for the Planning Board to comment on 286 New Garden Road. Tavis, you want to fill us in on this application?
Yeah, so the short part of this is in order for the property owner to build a new home on a Class 6 road, they have to obtain a Class 6 road waiver, which is done through the Board of Selectmen. Part of that process is the Planning Board being given the opportunity to provide any comments to the selectmen that they can review in their use in evaluating the request for the waiver. In this particular case on New Garden Road, there are 2 or 3 year-round homes on this Class 6 portion of the road preceding the current application, which the existing parcel is currently a camp. They're looking at raising the camp and constructing a new single-family home. And then, I don't know, 3/10 to half a mile later, there's another year-round home. So MED is already there. The tree cutting's already been done. The road is already being used by several year-round homes. But this is the opportunity to fill in one of the missing pieces in the middle for the applicant.
And so the application is before us because the camp is being torn down and a year-round home put up.
Correct. 674-41 states that no new building can be erected without a Class 6 waiver.
Okay, is the applicant here?
Yes.
Okay. Hi.
Welcome. Thank you for having us. My name is Jason Walsh. This is my wife, Renee. So I met with Mr. Austin a couple weeks ago, and he said just to come in here and inquire about a building permit for 286 New Garden Road. Excuse me. Sorry. So the cabin we just bought last fall, it was built in the 1950s, 320 square feet. It already has its own address. There are 2 driveways in it. There's also another rock foundation on the property that's on the tax map. There's over 3 acres. And we just wanted to inquire about the process. I know that we need to meet with you guys to, in order to build on a Class 6 road. We'll follow all the guidelines. We'll obtain a site plan review, perk test, hire wetland scientists. We have a couple of young kids that are running around, and the cabin doesn't have any electricity currently. There's no running water. I made a couple notes here. So there are 5 houses on the Class 6 road, 3 before me and 2 after me. There are 3 permanent homes, 2 before, 1 past us, and then the other 2 are seasonal homes. One of the permanent homes got approval to build on the Class 6 road in 2016, Zach Pryor. There are electricity poles half a mile past me down towards the end, which is Kathy Rankin. I think most of you know who she is. She worked for the town for many, many years. So looking at the road in general, I do have some sheets here to hand out if you guys would like one, a PowerPoint. So from Pleasant Valley to the actual Class 6 sign is 0.6 miles. And then after that, the road is actually still maintained another half a mile down to where it splits off. I think the plows have to go down there and kind of turn around. So the unmaintained road is only 0.2 miles, so less than a quarter mile of where we want to, make a renovation to the cabin. I have some lots of pictures here of the cabin if you guys want to look at them in the road. That's in pretty good shape. Those of you that don't know me, I've been living in town for 35 years. I grew up here. I went to Kingswood here, and I've been working at Kingswood as a PE teacher and a coach for the last 18 years. We want to just kind of build a house in the woods with our family, keep it a Class 6 road, keep it a rural area, and that's pretty much why we're here today.
Okay, and you're not the last house on the road.
No, Kathy Rankin is the last house, so she kind of maintains the road. Zach Pryor, who's also in the Class 6 road, he maintains it, Pryor Property Services, and I have a truck. We can plow as well and maintain the road.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's one more cabin beyond Kathy Rankin. It's just a seasonal house.
Okay, so our responsibility here is to report back to the selectmen so that they can actually vote on this application. So, planning board members, anybody have any comments?
I have a
Go ahead.
The issue before us is whether the local governing body, the selectmen, should vote to authorize the issuance of building permits for the erection of buildings on a portion of a Class 6 highway. So it's not, we're not issuing one building permit here. The future land use recommendations under open space protection, number 4, says prohibit the issuance of building permits for development on Class 6 roads. One of the problems with this particular location is it's 3,125 feet from the end of the Class 5 road. And the biggest problem is that it's accessed over a bridge that was built, I'm guessing, by Kathy Rankin. But that provides the access to this parcel. And when you look at granting permits on a Class 6 road, particularly in this case, because I know that at least on one occasion, Kathy Rankin was trying to get the town to help with the bridge. If you open this portion beyond the bridge, then there are other parcels of land down there which someone else could come in, and if you grant this, it would be very difficult to deny someone else. And that means eventually something is going to need to be done about the bridge, and you're going to have homeowners who are going to come before the town and say, we pay a lot in taxes, and we need you to do something about this road, and it's on a portion of road where the town cannot expend town funds. But the town can have liability if there's a hazardous condition that develops on the road. So I think in terms of future landowners and the town having at some point to address the situation down there, we should recommend that the selectmen not authorize the issuance of permits on the Class 6 road. And if you look at the statute, there are two ways to do this. One is what's in front of us with to respond to the selectmen. There's also a provision to appeal to the Board of Adjustment. And in that case, among the criteria are whether it will increase the difficulty of carrying out the master plan, which this would. It will not cause a hardship to future purchasers, which it would do, and undue financial impact on the municipality when the town has to somehow address the situation down there. Also, not in this particular section of New Garden Road, but when you get further down, there is a it's part of the maintained snowmobile trails. You have people who use these roads for horseback riding, bicycling, dirt bikes, hiking, and this allows encroachment into those areas and defeats the purpose of trying to maintain open space, which has been repeatedly shown to be important to the people in the town.
Okay, Roger, and the subject property is after the bridge, right?
Yes, it's immediately after the bridge.
Other comments?
Yeah, it's my understanding that there are several houses past yours that are also over the bridge. Is that correct?
Yes, that's true. Yeah, one is permanent resident.
You've got one house, which is
Wait a
Kathy
minute, are you
Rankin's.
done? Are you done?
No, it's, my concern is that if there are additional houses past yours, in light of Roger's comments, I'm questioning how much additional liability is created for the town if yours was to be added to that group.
Right. Well, I don't think there'd be any because it's a Class 6 maintained road. There's no more taxes for the town. It's not going to cost the town any more money.
There is one Kathy Rankin's house, and then there is a cabin, one-room cabin, no electricity, somewhat similar to this one, except it was rebuilt or built more recently. But it's not occupied on a regular basis.
Other comments?
Right here. So did the town ever maintain or discontinue maintaining this road?
As far as we know, they maintain the 1.1 miles from Pleasant Valley to where the plows turn around in the winter, and our cabin is 0.2 miles from that point.
So do you have records of that?
I've got a lot of pictures of, they just went through and maintained it last week or the week before. I got a bunch of slideshow pictures.
Up to that point before your place?
Up to the point before, yeah, it's just the 0.2 miles from where it's unmaintained.
So do you know what keeps them from continuing to maintain it past that point?
I think it's because it's a Class 6 road and they don't maintain it, and that's where the plows turn around in the wintertime.
Yeah, well, understood. The Class 6 classification is it's a Tavis. Would you give me a clarification on what a town Class 6 road is?
The only way to be a Class 6 road is to be a Class 5 road that is not maintained for a period of 10 years or more. So this was originally a Class 5 road in Wolfeboro, and then the town discontinued from a set point. There's even the sign on the road. It says Class 6 from here forward. So this is a Class 6. So the only way to build is through a Class 6 waiver.
Okay. No further questions.
Red, any?
No, I'm going
Yeah.
to save my common stuff for the
Yeah,
selectmen
okay.
level there,
All right,
so.
Yeah, all right. Go ahead, Peter.
I was on the Natural Resources Master Plan Committee, and we said that there should be no development on Class 6 roads. My experience is that road is relatively well maintained in the winter. Mm-hmm. However, there is no guarantee that that is going to occur in the future. And so, therefore, I would worry about the condition of the bridge and how anybody is going to maintain that. And therefore, to me, there's a real risk unless there is some organization. There are many private roads in the town of Wolfeboro that have, road committees and whatever to maintain things, but I don't know of any evidence that that occurs. And that bridge is something which is not a trivial structure. And if you call 911 for a fire issue, you have to make sure that the fire truck is going to get across that.
Actually, the waiver they're signing is a release of liability. If the fire truck can't make it, the snowplow can't make it, that's what they're agreeing to with the waiver.
Okay, so anyway, that's, the issue is that this is something which you have to maintain, and from what I have read or what I have seen, there is nothing which ends up saying that maintenance of that bridge or any of the road or the plowing or anything else is going to be done in the future.
Yep. So since we signed that waiver, does that have anything to help our case, or?
The fact that the neighbors have done it now has nothing to do with 20 years from now.
Right. Mhm. And I noticed on the tax map that you are my neighbor, and Roger Murray is your neighbor right down in
I
that,
am a
that
neighbor.
area.
I am across the stream
Yep.
from you. I have yes, I own property on New Garden Road, but that is not a buildable lot. And the lot which is across the stream from you is not connected to New Garden Road, so it is not, to me, I can't build on it. I have no access to it. And your building would not be an issue for me.
Yeah,
That
of
is,
course. Yep. Right.
it is completely separate from my lot, from everything else.
Yep.
I'm worried about the long-term effect of a house on that property. And in fact, Kathy Rankin has a house, she's had it for a long time, but that is not something which goes necessarily for 20 or 30 or 50 years.
Vaughn, did you have any comments?
I have a question. Does the person beyond them have a waiver signed also?
I don't know.
I think she,
The law being what the law is, the only way to maintain it year-round would be to have a waiver, yes.
Okay, Steve,
But
did you
she's
have any?
been there for a long time, so it may be,
If there was construction on the Class 6 road prior to 1983, it's possible there is no waiver.
Steve, any thoughts?
I look at it for the long-term investment. We're short of housing in this town, and we need housing for these types of people. Perhaps you do put a group together to fix the problem, which is going to include fixing the bridge and upgrading the road.
Thank you. Julie or Jane? Anything?
I kind of look at this as though they're going to have just an extra long private driveway, that the road is going to end where the sign says it turns into a Class 6 road, and then it's up to them to figure out how they're going to get up the hill to their house.
Yeah, the only question I had is, and I'm just really curious, are you able to get, like, fire insurance on your house if
Well,
you...
we don't currently live there. We just purchased the cabin in the fall. We're just looking to add on a bathroom and get a septic and a well. We're not looking to tear it down or build a mansion down there, just enough.
No, I was just wondering
Yeah.
if that was if that would be an issue for you down the road.
Would be something
to be
we'd-
able to get,
Yeah.
like if an insurance company would underwrite that, or would they say, sure, we'll insure you for like
Right.
3 times the value of your house?
Right.
I was just curious about that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody?
I got one more comment. Should the select board agree to the agreement and release that waives responsibility for the road maintenance and such, I would recommend the selectmen add a condition that says that the landowner is responsible for transporting any children to the nearest regular school bus stop. So that
absolutely.
the school bus isn't trying to get down that road.
Probably
Yeah.
takes them to school.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're not asking to maintain the road or any of that. We signed a waiver. We're just, I mean, we offered to even work on the bridge too with our own money. We just wanted, like you said, a long driveway into the woods.
Would you like to make a motion?
One comment to Doug's point there. So the selectmen are responsible for the neighbors past their driveway because it's a Class 6 road. It's still a town road, but it's not maintained by the town. So all the people past their driveway that are affected by any stormwater or anything else that goes past their driveway is what the selectmen are going to review before they give final approval, because it's a town road, but it's just not maintained by the town. So the town doesn't want anything to happen to that road that would compromise the neighbor down the street, because they have to answer to them also. So when you go to do your work, you're not improving the driveway or making any adjustments in that fashion, are you?
No, not.
No.
I mean,
So, I mean, so they're not changing stormwater direction or anything, and that would be what I would be concerned about. So, I mean, I would make a motion to approve this concept for these people, for the release, and send it to the selectmen.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Okay, you had a condition?
Yes.
Doug?
Well, I don't know if it's appropriate in this setting to include it as a condition.
Yeah, well, yes, I think
Yes.
we should because they're comments.
Yeah, so the condition I had made was that the landowner would be responsible for transporting any children to the nearest regular school bus stop.
Okay.
One note, though, the school system is a separate thing from the town, so transporting the kids would come under the school district issue, because they won't go certain places anyway. So that really wouldn't have anything to do with the town.
Okay, but there
They're two
isn't
separate
any-
entities.
I don't think there's any harm in adding conditions
No,
like
but you
that.
couldn't enforce it.
Functionally speaking, the planning board is only making a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. So the recommendation, if it came with a recommendation, is up for the board to contemplate.
And John, did you have something you wanted to add about stormwater? Or
No,
okay.
they've testified that they're not improving the driveway or the conditions in the way in, so they're not affecting that.
Okay. And the applicant agrees that they know that you have to sign something that says that the town is not responsible. Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Tavis.
I just wondered if the maker of the motion was accepting of the condition from the seconder.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, okay, go ahead, Roger.
I just want to state for the record that I do not abut this property, nor do I have any access to New Garden Road in this area. I do own land with frontage on New Garden Road, but it's way down in New Durham.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I abstain.
Okay.
And I abstain.
Roger is abstaining, and Peter, Roger is saying no, Peter is abstaining, and Brad is abstaining.
So I heard 4 to approve, 1 to deny, and 1 to abstain, or 2 to abstain, excuse me, for 7.
Right. Okay, all right, thank you very much.
all right, well, thank you
folks.
for your time.
So, Madam Chair, I'll put together a memo for your signature to go to the selectmen? Okay.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a concept plan from Hunters at 60 South Main Street. They were here at the last meeting, and they're back. It would be good if you could turn one of the easels around so the audience can see it.
Yeah, we may have to turn a few of them around, Kathy, because...
Oh, okay. All right, okay, that's fine.
Good evening. Randy Tatro for the applicant, which is Hunter's IGA. Can everybody hear me okay?
Now we can.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Maybe tilt the mic towards you a little bit more.
How's
There
that?
you go.
Thank you. So I came back before the board back on March 21st during that for a preliminary discussion. The owner was unavailable. He was sick at the time. He's here tonight, so that, along with the management group. I requested this preliminary meeting based on the initial feedback we had, other feedback that's been forwarded to us, and just a reasonable venue to be able to discuss it. It's a discussion. We know quite a bit more than I did the first time. Not as much as I wanted at this point. There were complications with the cleanup, so that put us behind a desired schedule. But recently we've been able to get in there and get some work done. Everybody here okay? Yeah, okay. And so how I'd like to do it tonight, if it's okay with the board, is I'm basically the narrator. I can answer any questions that we've talked about before, but I'd like to focus on the major items that were brought up in our initial discussion. But before we do that, the management group would just like to say a word on their behalf,
Okay.
a short word on their behalf, and then after that we can go into the other stuff.
Okay, that's good.
Good evening. My name is Perry Shaw. I'm the operations supervisor for Mr. Craffey and Hunter Shop and Save. Tonight, these gentlemen are going to be showing you what we'd like our store to look like in the future. Building a new store is like a puzzle. You have to get the footprint before you have to get the border and get the footprint. What I do is I do the inside of the store, not the outside. So I want to go over some of the things that is affecting what I'm trying to do in the preparation of restructuring our store. 5 years ago, I was able to call a refrigeration company and order 60 feet of produce cases and get them delivered in 5 to 6 weeks, ready to be installed. Yep, sorry. Okay, sorry. The 5 to 6 weeks, it would be delivered, ready to be installed. Right now, it's 10 to 12 months order time because of culvert, labor, shortage everywhere in the industry. So when I talk about a puzzle, I can't put the puzzle together until I know what the borders are of the puzzle, okay? COVID really set everything back when it comes to ordering things and stuff like that for inside. You know, cases, computers, all that kind of stuff. Our goal was to open in March of 2024 if it was possible, initially. Because of the lag time of equipment and computers and this, that, and the other, it's looking more and more like May-ish, June of 2024. And that's if everything's perfect, which usually doesn't happen. Obviously, we want to be ready before the summer business of 2024. Missing 2 summers of businesses of the tourist season is devastating to our business. We recently opened an office across the street from Walgreens in the old Remax real estate office. We have a constant stream of customers and employees coming in wanting to know how our progress is on the rebuild. Mr. Craffey and the management team of Hunters we have a strong obligation to our employees and our customers to get back as soon as we can with the restrictions that we're running into. We employ 40 to 60 people off-season, 75 to 85 in the summertime, if we can get that many. We believe we have a big impact for the town as the summertime tourists, the island people, the boat people come in, shop with us, shop with other businesses in the town as well. And I think it runs a potential tourists, less tourists coming here because they'll go someplace else so they can get everything at once. Their groceries, go to lunch, buy shoes, do this, do that. They'll want to go to one stop, not 2. We had a tremendous business with boat and island customers. They're not going to be walking down to the other supermarket and wheeling all that stuff back down. It just won't happen. So they'll make the decision, I'm afraid, and I hope not, to go some other place where they can get everything at once. I think that's a big factor for the town to look at because it could affect the tourism of the summertime here. I truly believe that. we just want to make sure that we take care of our customers and the employees in the town of Wolfeboro Business District the best we can. And that's what we hope that we can achieve with the time limits that are being put on us with ordering and this, that, and the other. So please bear with us. We're trying as hard as we can to get back as quick as we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
If I can follow that, but I'll do the best I can. So the next thing we'll start with, I know there were, 4 major items other than the traffic that John was, other than the parking spaces that John was concerned about. I think we're pretty much clear on that. Quickly, we have the required amount of parking spaces on site in vicinity, and that's not even counting the 10 that we propose out back. We did look into the off-street parking that I know is, part of the regulations, and that was another 60-something. So, but the vicinity parking is what we focused on, trying to keep and not lose. In other words, the parking spaces that are closest to the store. And so we tried to do the best we could to eliminate as few of those as possible. And if you have specific questions to that, I'm sure Paul can answer those. So the 4 items that generally we're focused on during the last discussion was drainage, stormwater management, lighting, landscaping, and architectural standards. It seemed to be the 4 that the board was most concerned about in our last meeting. There'll be other ones as far as the actual design. We got to go back to the TRC on June 7th to meet with the department heads again once we have better idea of the exact engineered utility connections and so forth and the grading. We've come pretty close with that so far, but I'd like to focus on those 4 items if we can. Paul will be able to discuss how we feel we meet them or closely meet them, and the board can ask him questions. So I'll let him deal with the first 3. The architectural company from Harriman and Zach Smith is here, and we'll do that third, if that's okay. And he'll be able to come up and present what they, what they're thinking of doing. If we can hold the questions till Paul gets done, and then you can ask him whatever. But if you feel obligated that you need to ask something in the middle, I'm sure that'll be okay as well. Okay?
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
Is there any way do you have another site plan so that so that you can turn one around and one will be facing us? Is that? Oh, that.
That's a grading plan.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is the site plan.
Yeah, Paul.
Yeah.
I can hold that and this. Okay.
Okay. Did you introduce yourself?
My name is Paul Blanc. I'm with Norway Plains Associates. So this is the site plan here. The proposed building there is in that orange. And this area down here is going to be stormwater management and treatment. And so I'm going to switch this around if you don't mind, and then as we go through. So as Randy kind of gave me a pre-app for this was, I'll talk a little bit about each one of these topics. So can you hear? Okay, you can hear me now, right? There we go. All right. Hold it right there. So let's start with stormwater. It's very important. All right, so what we've done here is we've collected the stormwater to treat it for total suspended solids, phosphorus, and nitrogen, okay? And these are what the requirements are in your regulations. We did this through 2 basic, what they're called is tree filters, okay? They'll sit in the curb, and they'll located right here and right here. The whole site drains down in this area.
Okay, so on South Main Street and then part of Glendon Street.
Yeah, along this edge. So we trap it along the curb. It goes in there, gets treated, goes through a system of subsurface catch basins, and then out to the final, which is a vortex system, which is the 5,000 series, and we signed a size for a 50-year storm event. What's currently going on is the water comes down here in sheets past here, so we've proposed a simple speed bump. And what that'll do is that'll direct the stormwater to that catch basin. We're going to replace that catch basin with a deep sump catch basin with a hood on it as well. So it's kind of like pre-treatment before then the standard treatment and then discharge out. So this does the nitrogen and phosphorus removal, as well as a little TSS, and then this gets 92% of TSS removal. This removes 35% nitrogen and 60% or 72% of phosphorus for one of those and one of those. So they've all been sized for the first flush storm, type 2 storm event, which is pretty intense up in this area. And then we sized this unit here. We just went with the big boy, just for the big, just go for 50-year storm rather than just a first flush. There's a maintenance program that's going to be part of this. So it'll be biannually. They'll go out, they'll maintain it, they'll remove all the sediment in all basins and clean out the vortex system, as well as they'll take care of the Filtrex system down here. So that's kind of there for storm water. What we're doing around back for the parking lot is we've graded it so it'll flow through here, catch along this drip edge, and be directed back into our system. So we've captured that too and treated it. It's a little tough back here to grade that way, but we did it. So it's going to work out pretty well. So we feel pretty proud about this. I think this is great rather than doing nothing, you know. It's a great improvement. This down here, the little berm, will hope alleviate this issue down here. So this is all going to be landscaped along here with trees, okay? And then this area will be landscaped around here, which will show a little bit. You can see the trees here.
Okay, could you show, can you turn that?
And then I'm going to turn around. You ready, everybody? All right. All right, Vanna White. So that's kind of stormwater and a little bit of landscaping there for you. And then we'll jump right into lighting. So I'm going to turn this a little bit this way. So okay, here we go again. I got to get used to this. I'm not usually up on stage or anything like that. So here we go. So what you see there in this blue is what those existing lights are out there now. Okay? And then what we're proposing are these lights here. Dark sky compliant, LED, warm lit. Okay, so we just got that all done by professionals, and they're going to replace these two lights that are existing out there with LED, and they'll be downcasting as well. Dark sky compliant. I think that's pretty straightforward.
Okay, so all the lights that you're replacing are going to be down directed then?
Yes, of course. Of course. Yep.
Okay.
It shows all the foot candles in this analysis there.
So are you removing the lights that are there?
Removing the only light we're going to be removing is the light in the middle of the parking lot that sits on that concrete. So that was located about here. That's gone.
So there's lights out in that parking lot that have been replaced that aren't dark sky compliant. Since
these lights here that are on the poles?
Yeah.
No, we're not going to replace those. Those are just going to stay the way they are. That's why they're in a different color. They're just existing.
So that was the question that I asked Tavis last meeting about retrofitting the old lights to those new lights.
The lights that are on utility poles are town lights that are leased by the property owner.
So they don't have to comply with the dark sky compliance? It says all existing lighting.
Well, there's currently a ZBA appeal asking that same question, but that's not really for the planning board. As I understand it, all the original lights that were installed were high-pressure sodium, and those can't be replaced, so when they were replaced with LEDs. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that is the current practice of MED when replacing lights that people are paying rent for.
I know, but we're trying to protect the rest of the neighborhood with the lighting, so we're...
The question currently before the Zoning Board of Adjustment is whether or not the town lighting regulations apply to those lights or not.
So how do you want to proceed then?
They're not touching them, they are existing. I don't think the board has jurisdiction on them.
All right.
So that's for the lighting. Great questions, though, John. Okay, so we got the landscaping, and then the grading plan. So the grades are basically going to remain the same to the parking lot, so we don't have to do any disturbance of it. We're just going to keep the building, drop it just slightly, and then just add a little sidewalk on the side with curbing. That way they can come right out here. It's flat 2%. This is all 1%, so 88 parking will be there. Bicycle parking will be here. So that's about it. It's pretty simple grading there. And then in the back parking lot, everything will be pitched this way towards Hunters.
Okay, and the existing parking and your proposed parking, what will that come out about even, or how will
Yeah,
that,
we
that
meet the
work?
requirements. The parking is, so Hunters originally had 71 spaces, so we're required to have 63, and that's what we have on site is the 63.
Okay,
Okay, and then the 10 in the back, so that's the bonus.
right, okay,
That's going
thank
to be
you.
nice. So everybody can park back there and then walk back. The entrance will be right here. And then a little bike park, a little spot there like that for the kids. There goes Vanna again.
Yeah, sorry about that. We had a zip drive we were going to try to do on the computer. So, generally what Paul's... Microphone.
Hey, Paul, yeah, right.
Generally, where Paul's talking is in the area of the existing parking lot. What we tried to do is to try to keep on-site or vicinity parking without, and still trying to meet as close as we can with the site review regulations. As everybody knows that's been involved in this, and John had a question originally about was the parking sized on the new footprint, and that, yes, it is. And the new footprint is 3,115 square feet. I know that by heart now. And that's the reason why we're in front of the board. Because if they could have built in the original footprint or they wanted to, then, you know, they were grandfathered in that configuration. And you've seen the plans that shows both, so you can see it's mostly a squaring off of that. I know there's been a lot of input on repositioning the building, different aspects to that, and you know, I understand all that. We've looked at that. The owner is not on board with that. You know, again, we get paid to design, so we'll do whatever. But in this particular case, as Perry stated, time frame wise and construction wise, we feel this is the quickest way to do it and the best spot to do it in. It still has its issues. It still has its complications. And one of them being to come up to the board in the site review application and try to get something reasonable that everybody can agree on. That kind of segues into the next element of this, if there isn't any questions right off. But
I just had one question.
Sure.
Actually, I was asked this by a former Wolfeboro tree warden. Is there any possibility of getting some more trees in the parking lot?
Yeah, see, so we have, that's a good question. And so we know that we've had some trees be compromised by either their, you know, being ash trees or the snow or whatever over the years. We have a landscape architect on board, Woodburn Associates from Durham. They're very good. We've had them look at the situation, and we'll be able to provide a little better landscape plan by a professional. In this particular case, we're kind of, hindered to be able to do something out in the middle. I mean, we had a conversation with her, and she said, you know, those tree boxes are basically renting a tree. they'll live a certain amount of time. It's very difficult to, long-term that situation. So, we'd rather not do that. Even the ones on the perimeter are that way to some degree, Roger. So, again, we're trying to avoid eliminating any vicinity parking that we can and still try to do the best we can to buffer and enhance what's there already. And that's been the focus. Hopefully that answers your question. There is some elements to this that are directly related to the actual design of it, the actual civil part, which is connecting new utilities, which we discussed originally, new water, new sewer, new underground electrical services. So, we're trying to get that all to work with the site grading and the drainage. I think we've gotten close to a good compromise, but that'll be up to the board. So I think we can segue into one of the elements that was brought up at the previous discussion, and I'll introduce Zach to, excuse me.
I have one question.
Sure.
Before he gets up there. Question about the speed bump.
Yep.
Is it going to be one of those cute plastic ones? Is it going to be just a bump in the asphalt? What's the plan?
It'll be asphalt. So we'll cut and be a little bump. It's not going to be. So the idea, it's really to direct stormwater.
Right.
That's really what it's for.
I'm just imagining the bucket loader coming down the hill in the winter, scooping stuff up, and then it's going to disappear. So is that going to be part of the plan for the stormwater, that has to be maintained along with the stormwater
that's
stuff?
part of the, that's exactly right. You're on target. So that's exactly, and it's got a low profile, and with we're going to be cutting it in, but that's exactly it, and it's got a flat top on it. It's really to direct water, not to for traffic.
It's a tricky corner getting in there.
What's that? I'm
it's
sorry.
a real tricky corner getting in there.
It is tricky. So yep, right there. But that seems to be the best solution. We're going to try and regrade it and feather it that way and make it like a swale, and that didn't work out very well with the grade. So that seemed like pretty simple.
And it also, for people who park there and go over the post office like I do, it'll also help because the water runs right down now and goes right out into the street. So that was one of the things that was brought up at the TRC meeting. Can we divert that a little bit? And this could serve two purposes in that way. And yeah, the speed bumps get beat up by the plow sometimes, and trying to come up with one that's low profile, like Paul said, and still work that way. Okay? John?
So the parking lot in the back, for the record, that will be a public parking place.
Right.
Yeah, that will be included in this. First come, first serve, like we know, and maybe some employees would, use that if they get there early or whatever, because
But you're not going to be able to put signs up and say, this is for hunters parking only, right? Is that?
I don't know.
I'm asking the chairman on this one.
Well, they now have a sign like that says for hunters parking. It's their property.
I know, but I
and
thought
they
when
share it with Walgreens and Hunters. So
I was just under the impression when somebody created a parking spot, it became a public parking spot, just like Eastern Propane when they created their parking spot.
That was something that was discussed at the meeting because I was there, and it appeared that they didn't have a problem with that off hours, John. And I think that's how that one was decided.
Right.
Because I was dealing with it, and I think there is signs that say Eastern Propane and the paint shop, customers. But I think in off hours, it reverted to anybody that wanted to park there. They didn't have any problem with that liability-wise. So.
Yeah, I've never seen any problem with the public parking there. They go shopping, they go to Walgreens, they go down town to the post office, and I imagine that's going to continue.
Yep. If we have a second, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, if we have a second after I hear that question, the owner might want to say a word right before we get into the architectural stuff.
I was just going to say, even if it is a public parking space, it's not really near anything. So odds are that'd be a last resort for people to go someplace for a public parking space. It's not like it's right in front of the post office or it's right near Butternuts or something. I mean, it's not in the middle of anything. So even if it is public, from a practical point of view, I don't see a lot of people saying, oh, I'm going to go park way over there, away from everything, and then trudge all my groceries way over here.
Okay.
That's, just from a practical point of view, whether or not it's public or private.
Okay,
Kathy?
go ahead.
Everybody all set?
I think so. I mean, this is a privately owned parking lot, and they can restrict it however they wish, as long they can't.
I think what happened on the last one, it was discussed at the meeting, and they said, we have no problem people parking off hours. So. But I will introduce Dan Craffey. He's the owner of the property. And let Zach get set up.
Hi, I want to thank Wolfeboro.
If you could hold the mic up close.
Oh, okay. My name's Dan, and I want to thank Wolfeboro for the kindness.
I think the mic's turned off.
Testing.
Tavis,
Testing.
I think
Can you hear us?
Yeah, okay.
Hi, my name is Dan Craffey, and I'm the owner of Hunters, and I want to thank Wolfeboro for the kindness and all the gestures that have happened since the store burnt down. We realize how important the store is to the community, and we've been working 7 days a week trying to get everything done. To get it done in a year is a huge task. So we have assembled a team of probably the dream team. Harriman does Whole Foods, they do Hannaford's, and Randy has done a tremendous job. Everybody, when this happened, everybody's out a year to 18 months on work, and everybody said, we'll put you right in the front to help Wolfeboro get their supermarket back. So I really appreciate all that, and the store is going to be a state-of-the-art store. The efficiency is almost 500% with the heating and all that stuff. And there's only 4 other stores in the world like it. So we're pretty excited about everything. It's going to be a beautiful store. We want to get the employees back working. That's our family, and we really want to get them back as quick as possible. So,
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. As Dan said, I'm Zach Smith with Harriman Associates. We're here with this great opportunity to help restitch this piece of the fabric of the town back together. And we take that as a big challenge, and as something that we're proud to work with the town, work with the community, work with the Perrys, work with Dan and everybody to try to find this best compromise between a really challenging site with a lot of history, a community that clearly cares a lot about their grocery store and their downtown, and the most efficient building that we can make for the future operation, all as fast as we can do it. And so normally it's hard to make 3 things work. We're going to try to make 4 things work with this building. Yes, there will be compromises to make 4 things work, but we're here to talk with you guys and the community and everybody to try to figure out what those best compromises are. I did hand out some handouts. The handouts are the same exact thing as what's on the board. I will do my best. I talk a lot with my hands, and so I'll try to address everybody as I'm talking as well as point to things. I don't have a lot of sheets at this point because this is a very early, I think it's even called a conceptual review. And so we do hope to get feedback. We have received some emails with some feedback, and we hope to continue to incorporate that feedback into the design. So when we're back here with our formal meeting, it's hopefully good job, and let's get this back. Let's get these guys working, and let's get your grocery store open. And so the first image is really the most important image. It's the image of the store within the context, facing from South Main Street in the corner. You can see the town hall obviously where we all are. You can't see Walgreens in the background. Even though it is a very important image, I'm actually going to skip by it and we'll come back to it. Now I got it. I blame you for not taking that clip off, though. All right. So a lot of copy and paste text. You guys know all your architectural standards. This is just a couple of them, and the couple of them that I felt was important in this first pass. One of the challenges that was talked about in civil is this building is set back into the back of the lot. We do acknowledge that's not what your architectural standards are looking for. The civil team did a great job looking at that. With all the factors, this is where it ended up. And so we start to ask more of the building, how do we address some of the things in the architectural standards when we're not meeting the site frontage requirements? So some of the things we did is a grocery store. It's unfortunately a big building. It's 18 feet to this top cornice line. Within the context of that neighborhood, you can go back and refer to that picture, which we'll jump back to again. It's not monstrous. It is set back off the road. It's not going to create shadow issues to the front of that landscape and things like that. But it is big. Many of your architectural standards or design standards talk about the scale of the building. And so when we're approaching that, we're doing some simple maneuvers to basically shorten that down to about 12 feet where this white horizontal band is. And we changed the material below that to a darker color reminiscent of a brick. And then at the very bottom, an actual brick. Most of the brick in town is a fairly uniform, dark brown, red color, similar to what you see on this building, with what we call very narrow flashing, the blackness on the brick. You can even look out the window here. That's the kind of look we would be after. The school down the road, Kingwood, also same kind of brick. Where brick is used, it's pretty much, as far as I can tell, and please correct me if I'm wrong, fairly uniform in that way and something that we would look to match, and also bring in that material just for the durability along the base of the building for shopping carts and plant structures and those types of things that go up in front of the building. We did raise the centerpiece, and we are looking at some materiality options of that, which I don't have with me yet, but maybe even making this full brick. It is clapboards on top, similar to the rest of the building right now. But because the building is set back, making it very clear where the entrance of the building is, where people will be going, helping to safely navigate pedestrians and bikes and cars to the entrance, and not leaving much ambiguity or hiding between awnings or long kind of pedestrian escapes in front. Flagpoles back. We are hoping to reincarnate the Hunter sign that was temporary on the front of the street. We're showing that up here. The street sign would stay the same. Talked about height. Anybody want to see the big board before I change the page? And so a lot of talking. That's the kind of zoomed in South Main Street side of the building with the entrance. And then next page, just some more renderings of the building in a nice blue sky with somehow ocean behind the building. So final presentation, we'll get these into some context for you. But this does start to show the other sides of the building, which we would consider front sides of the building. And so this long section along the parking lot, which runs parallel to the perpendicular street, on the elevation, you might be able to see this better. We did break up that facade with some pilasters along that, which will be reminiscent of the breaks between the windows. Start bringing that pattern language around the corner, so it's not just a big red side or red and beige side. Here again, you can see the awnings. We are looking to bring in a little bit more of a classic New England storefront. This is still being worked on, but we are starting to introduce some mullions to windows, not just storefront. Yes, it will be storefront, but try to make it look a little bit better. Same thing with the actual storefront. We'll look at some mullions up here. One of the more recent ideas we're playing with, these windows are actually opaque here. One of the challenges of grocery stores is they actually don't like natural light off the walls because we have produce cases and freezer cases and milk cases. Sometimes you can get in stuff on the roof, but along these edges and the shopping flows tend to be walls. We're starting to look at doing something that might be an interesting opportunity for the community. I'm just going to kind of float out the idea to see if it sticks. Is you can barely see, but there is a map of the Wolfeboro section of Lake Winnipesaukee there. Is there something interesting in terms of a map or navigation? Starbucks does it a lot when they have really long walls. They'll do like an interesting mural. So something there could be interesting, could be informational, an opportunity where we want that kind of form there just because of the symmetry of that entrance. Can't really do a window. We could, it might not look great. Is there an opportunity for something there that the community can contribute and help with as the building's being built and eventually occupied? Sorry, that was a surprise. And the last page, which are just some elevations. Most of the stuff I covered, you can start to see some of the stuff I talked about along this edge, the pilasters repeating some of the look happening up here. We do have two long red sides of the building. We're looking into ways to make these better. This is the back parking lot and the residential side, or these houses, the back side of these houses over here. So we are looking at these two to see if we can do anything a little bit better while keeping costs in line and those types of things. But yeah, that's kind of where we are.
Okay.
Spoke really fast. I'm sure there's a lot of questions. I'm sure there's a lot of input from the board.
Okay, and questions from board members?
Yeah, I have a question on the 10 parking spaces proposed for the back. Have you given consideration to snow storage or removal there?
Sorry, I didn't expect that one. Yeah, actually, that area out back, the town used to dump snow for quite a while. They had an agreement with the previous owner, which probably wasn't the best place. In this particular case, we know what's dealing with snow storage in the front. Dan has a contract to bucket it out as soon as he can so that he doesn't lose any parking spaces. So that's really the only way. There isn't going to be a lot of room. We're going to have to buffer that residential side, the rental. There's going to be a fence there and landscaping, and it's going to wrap around. We are going to need a ret wall on this backside by Union Street, so there isn't a lot of opportunities for for landscaping on that side. But as far as the snow storage goes, to answer your question, there's going to have to be a contract to keep up with that, because there's a lot of room for that.
I just didn't see anything on the school facade about back of house. There's nothing in the elevations that accounts for getting stuff delivered that I saw, anyway. Or is that all is that going to be on the Glendon Street side?
Yeah, actually, that was my next question, is I see that on the left side of the west elevation is a loading bay, and I'm concerned whether trucks backing into there are going to impact foot traffic into Walgreens.
Well, related to at the last discussion, there was talk about using, everyone's apparently more focused on the 10 stalls behind right now, but there was talk about off School Street where the 10 parking stalls are, being able to accommodate box trucks and things like that, and I don't.
So we did talk about that. Obviously, anything larger than a small truck can't get in there. So the grades also present a problem there because it's higher than what the first floor is going to be of Hannaford. So we're going to have to, we're grading that back, and we need to have an egress way in the back of the building as well, by purposes. So we're still going to be able to ramp that and have a small access way in the back. But all the major trucks are going to have to come in through what you see is pretty close to where they did before. And, in off hours, they're going to have to be scheduled. The owners can speak to that. But that's about the only way we can get them in, get them backed up, and get them out in this particular situation. So
is that the west side we're talking about where the loading dock is?
yeah, it'd be the Walgreen side towards the White House.
So you're going to move it down to the corner?
Excuse me?
Look on this. Is it that or this?
Here now.
Just show it on the site plan.
This looks like wood fencing to me.
No, that's
And
going to
that's
be
right
the
next
loading.
door to Walgreens.
Yeah.
So they're going to come in next to Walgreens
Yeah,
now.
in the same place. The same place they back into now.
That's not how they go in.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't how Hunters went in, but that's how Walgreens goes in. That's the only place that that we can do the trucks and be able to back them up in that area. And it's not optimum because it's pretty steep in times
Well,
over there.
I'm just thinking I'm going in to pick up my medication and I got to dodge the trucks.
No, because the trucks aren't going to be there, are not supposed to be there during your medication runs. And hopefully we'll have a pickup window in the back that you can pick up your prescriptions if you don't go in. We're juggling some things, but that is the only spot, engineering-wise and logistically, that we can get, the larger trailer trucks to be able to, manipulate that entrance and that
Well,
curve.
They do go in the other section now, the lower one. They back up into there now.
The lower one.
Yeah, right in the middle.
So where the dumpster
Yes.
That's where they go now. And is that a dumpster container
Right, but
cover? Is that what
it-
that is now?
Well, yeah. So where they used to go in before was a problem as far as the interior design.
Oh.
They need to try to load everything on that back side. So that's why that got switched. That adjusted the area a little bit from 2,900 something to 31 because we had to add a little extra room in there for that. But if you had access to the interior design, you'd see why that's the way it
That's all
is.
you had to say.
But, I can certainly have these guys speak to it, but that's the reason.
Well, if you got to come in the back, you got to come in the back.
Okay, Julie.
John?
So they're going to go past the dumpster, and then they're going to try to migrate that corner so that they can straighten out, and then they're going to back up.
Yeah, they're gonna go in forward and then back
Are they going to
up.
be able to make around
Yeah,
that
we've
last
got
corner?
the templates on paper, and we'll be able to provide them with you.
All right.
Believe me, we had to go through quite a bit of that.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why we've got the width we've got on that in front of the building, the 19 feet, because that's the only way we can swing it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what they did before. Hunters did a little bit different than Walgreens, but this will be all the same, so that there's not two spots that the trucks are backing in on. And if you look inside of the building, these guys can explain to you why that's better to unload and get it to the places inside the store. Okay?
All right.
I'll turn it back to Zach. Unless
So
any-
I have a question about ownership of the lots. What if these lots are ever divided into two? They're two separate lots. What if they sell one? Now the loading dock for Hunters goes across this other
Well,
property.
we did a lot line, we're going for a lot line adjustment bond.
She wasn't here for that meeting.
Okay, that's why. Yeah. We're going for a lot line adjustment to adjust that. The two properties are owned by different entities on the same owner. So there's already reciprocal parking easements for that, for the usage, and there's a lease with Walgreens that we couldn't impede on. So in this case, there will still be two separate lots. One will be Hunter's IGA under the lot line adjustment scenario that I showed the board, and then I'm coming in June for the approval. And then the back property is being merged, the vacant lot and Walgreens, so that'll be separate. But there will be reciprocal easements for Hunters to access the back of the building and for Walgreens to park in the Hunters area and so forth.
And are those recorded somewhere? At the,
They will be.
they will be recorded?
It will be,
Okay.
Vaughn. It will be coming before you guys in June for the final on the lot line adjustment. And that was what we showed you preliminarily. So hopefully that answers that. Okay?
Oh, okay,
So, Zach?
other questions? Go ahead, Steve.
Question for the architect.
Sure.
Is there a parapet around the top of this building?
Not yet. We're still looking into what mechanical equipment we're going to need on top. And
That's
so
exactly
there's
what I was going to ask you.
basically a gravel stop. We do have some ground-mounted equipment for the chillers, for the cooler cases, which is on the site plans in the back of the building by the loading dock in question. So that's that stuff. There probably will be packaged air handlers and those types of things on the roof. Nothing's on the roof. Nothing will be on the roof.
Awesome.
Okay. Any other go ahead, John.
So the gardening section that usually provides the plants and all the other stuff in the summertime, do you have a proposed location for all the ladies' plants? So are you going to give up some space out front, or are you not going to, or? Okay.
But part of the planting, I think, is on town property.
No, I'm talking about when they put their planters and their pots and they sell their stuff out front.
Okay.
I'm
I
asking
see.
about where they're going to be doing that
Okay.
area.
Yeah, it would be appropriate to show any outdoor display areas
Yeah,
if it's
right.
going to be there on the site plan.
Yes, and the and the screening at the back, I understand it's tight back there on the east elevation. Do we require landscape screening?
Well, are you saying parallel to Union?
On the east elevation on
So
the back side, which is
School.
over here, do we?
So school is north.
Yeah.
So I think we're
North or east? I guess one of the questions is how much of the building will be above the retaining wall that's currently there, parallel to Union?
right, and so obviously some will be for that height. It's probably going to be, 5 feet, that retaining wall on that far side. So I think what John's getting at is there is buffer requirements for residential properties. And I started to touch on that on the School Street side and that property line. And we're going to wrap that around the best we can. Now, because of the tightness with the ret wall on that back corner, we're not going to be able to provide it to that one rental. You know, the other ones are commercial properties. So, but what we're going to try to do is either get a landscape easement so we can do something behind the wall with the owner. Hunters, when they sold that property, that was their property, that rental property, Fresh Farm Foods back then. They left a right-of-way, they reserved a right-of-way to themselves that shows on the plans along that driveway. You know, so they have right of access there. They don't really, we're not planning to use it for anything, and so it's probably a little bit moot now. But maybe we can work some kind of a thing where we can get landscaping on that back corner. But it's really the only place where we're going to have an issue with full compliance, John. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just looking at the west elevation. This is the one that you see as you're
Julie, could you pull your mic down a little bit?
looking from Union Street, the west elevation, where you see that red car right there in the middle. I was kind of hoping that instead of making, since you're having to redo all the exterior, I was kind of hoping that, personally, you could break up this warehouse-looking building into something that looked a little bit more quaint and kind of country-ish. I mean, the front is fine. It's a grocery store. That's fine. But from that second blank window on, all the way down that side, I was kind of hoping you could do something like make it look like, oh, there's a woodshed there. Oh, the woodshed's attached to the barn. Oh, it's a different color. Oh, you know. So it looked like a couple of different buildings maybe stacked together, which probably wouldn't cost any more money. It would just take a little bit more attention when you're putting the siding on. Because
Sure.
now it just looks like a warehouse.
And so we are trying to make it look not as much of a warehouse, and we will certainly keep working on all this once we collect all the feedback. One of the challenges with this building is it is to undulate the roof line because of the type of building. It's a type of pre-manufactured metal building. Don't think like athletic facility. but it is. And so simple moves like this do get expensive, and the reason we're going this direction is kind of speed of construction to get the store back open. But we can certainly look at materials and siding and undulating
Color.
and thickening and coloring. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. One thing that might help break up the mass of the north elevation is to carry that yellow band all the way around it.
Sure.
You know, that on the east elevation too, at least the front of it will be very evident as you drive down North Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Go ahead.
One more. Yeah. It was mentioned earlier that there would be some ground-mounted chillers for the refrigeration equipment. I believe that was on the north elevation.
Yep. They're back here, which would be
On the School Street side.
Yeah, and so it's pretty tight back there. I'm wondering how you're going to screen those from view.
That was literally being worked on yesterday. So don't know yet. We will need vehicle protection, so there'll be bollards or something with some heft to it. I don't know if you guys had a chance to really think about it.
Probably going to be somewhat similar to the dumpster, correct?
If you could come to the microphone.
Come up to the mic.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's the system that we get the 500% efficiency, so it kind of needs airflow around it also. We didn't want to put it on the roof, so we're going to kind of tuck it in there. We'll try to do whatever we can, but it needs, because basically that whole store will heat itself through the refrigeration. We'll have a heating system, but it probably won't even go on throughout the whole year, even at minus 30 degrees. And it's all of the heat is all reclaimed from there. So it's a pretty state-of-the-art system. Like I said, there's only 4 stores in the world that have it. And, the carbon footprint is, it's a lot better than what we had. So.
I assume from your description you mean that you're going to pump the heat out of the refrigerated cases and put it back into the store for the people.
Yeah.
Is that essentially?
And actually, we'd have more heat. We could probably heat the whole neighborhood.
Yeah.
But
that's fine. But I'm just concerned about the aesthetics on the outside.
Okay.
And what about the cooling condensers?
It doesn't look bad. It's a machine.
Hold the microphone up to him. Yeah.
We'll try to screen it as best as we can without it hurting the operation. So.
Okay.
I think it's probably important for the board to hear that they only were able to get on the ground yesterday. So where the condensers are actually going to be on the ground and how they're going to be related to all the other connections is still up in the air, unfortunately.
Sure, and we recognize that this is a preliminary conceptual review.
Okay. Any member of the public want to ask a question? Go ahead, Suzanne. Oh, go ahead, Rich.
I'm Rich Massey, and I'm here representing the Wolfeboro Waters Committee. I presume most members of the board know what that is. It's a board appointed. It's a committee appointed by the Board of Selectmen to advocate for water quality in the town's surface waters. And the board will have received from the committee a letter addressing some of the stormwater issues that we thought were in play with regard to this proposal. I found Paul Wong's presentation interesting, and I have some questions which I'll address to the chair. Just to assure myself that, in fact, the values that were being enumerated with regard to treatment are in fact reflect the requirements and the standards in the town's stormwater regulations. So if anybody's following along, you probably don't have copies of this in front of you, but I'm looking at Section F of the stormwater regulations, stormwater management for redevelopment. And one of the standards is any redevelopment activity that results in improvements. I'm sorry. Let me find the top of this. Yeah, I have it in front of me. I just want to find my pledges. I got a lot of it. Increase. Following. Okay, sorry. I just had the wrong part. For sites meeting the definition of a redevelopment project, which I think we'd agree this is, having more than 60% existing impervious surface area, and then there are some standards. So we all agree that that's the condition we're dealing with here? Okay. There are two standards for stormwater treatment in this subsection, and the project is given the option of selecting one or the other. One is to implement measures on site that result in disconnection or treatment of 100% of the additional proposed impervious surface and at least 30% of the existing impervious area and pavement areas, preferably using filtration or infiltration. So it's basically treatment of 100% of the additional and at least 30% of the existing. The other option is if resulting in greater overall water quality improvement on the site, implement lid practices to the maximum extent practicable to provide treatment of runoff generated from at least 60% of the entire developed site. So I guess my question would be, which of those two standards are we referring to when we're talking about the treatment values that Paul Wong mentioned earlier?
Okay, let them answer. Rich?
My last name is Wong. Sorry, it's okay. Might hear it. I know. So that was a great question. So let's just review that again. The implement measures of on-site that result in a disconnect treatment of 100% of additional proposed impervious surface. Well, we're not adding any impervious surface. So let's, but we still want to treat it. Our goal is to treat the water. We don't want, this resource is very, very important. So let's just get that. So let's move on to the next one. If resulting in a greater overall water quality improvement on the site, implement lid practices to the maximum extent practicable. Sorry about chewing some gum here. Provide the treatment of runoff generated from at least 60% of the entire site. That's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to get a little more than 60% of the site. So the idea is that what we do here is we take everything from here and we just miss a little bit here because it's the way the grades are. And then we're actually grabbing some of this back here that's off-site. So I think it's a bonus, it's a plus here. And so I think that's what you're asking? Yeah, so that's the idea. And then with this right here, we get those values with the nitrogen and phosphorus removal and TSS removal. This has a high TSS removal rate, much greater than the 80% that's found.
May I
Yep.
ask?
Yes, please do.
What does TSS mean?
Those values, those treatment values?
Yes, so, yes. So for this system right here, the Vortex system, this is sized so it gets about 92% efficiency. So it meets the 80% TSS removal that's found in there. These filter systems here remove nitrogen and phosphorus totals, okay? So you have a high phosphorus removal, greater than 50%, but the nitrogen for one of these units gets only 35%. And this one only gets 35% too. So we're 15% shy of a standard. But what we're trying to do is do the best we can. With these here, though, they do remove a small percentage of hydrocarbons, which is not part of your standard. So that's a bonus part of this. We're also going to implement a deep sump catch basin with the hood too to get some more. That's like a double. This is a belt and suspenders old technique there. So, and then the regular clean out maintenance. With a lot of these pollutants, they'll tag on to the total suspended solids, as you know. So getting a lot of this right here, so that's kind of where
we're doing our best. I mean, that's our goal. That's, it's to protect the natural resource.
Thank you.
Yep.
I apologize for getting.
Oh, no, it's all right.
Okay, you all set, Rich? Okay.
So as the board knows, we got to discharge this somewhere, and we're discharging it to a somewhat compromised system, and I know that the town's trying to work on with Main Street, but just keep that in mind when we're talking about some of this stuff, because it's got to discharge. So we're going to try to deal with the stuff we got on site and make it better.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Suzanne. Yep.
Suzanne Ryan. The front page is like an optical illusion. We're a walking community in the downtown area. And when you walk along the sidewalk, you actually are looking up at the parking lot. It's elevated. This doesn't give you that effect that you see when you're there in person. So I would hope that, I'm not sure just where their property line ends, but even if it's not their property, in goodwill, in good faith, that I know most of that planting is voluntary planting, I believe, between the sidewalk and the parking lot. In good faith, I'd like to see them put some nice big shrubbery in there. And secondly, it wouldn't break the bank to do that. Secondly, the north elevation, the east elevation, and somewhat the west elevation, but most especially the north and east, it's ugly. It's just plain ugly. And John, you're a mason of sorts. I'm sure you've seen buildings that they have taken a treatment whereby they use a different material. It could be something square, hexagon, arched, or what have you, in a different color, and dress up the back of that building. It's just a ugly, ugly thing that you will see, not face on, but you're going to see it when you're walking around there. And they could do the same, some sort of effect. The east is a little better, but it's not that attractive even on the west elevation, where they've got like a different material making those uprights. They could do something in there that gives the effect of that there's a window there and with a different concrete material. I don't know the term, but the front you can live with, but the rest of it, it's ugly.
Thank you. Somebody else? Yeah, go ahead.
Maggie Steer, Wolfeboro Heritage Commission. I had a nice exchange with Mr. Craffey, sharing the ideas that were generated by the Heritage Commission at our last meeting, and I understand completely the constraints they're under. But I do want to refer to the general requirements of our zoning, which say that historic buildings and established architectural character are important component of our unique identity, and that while we place a high value on having a downtown grocery store, we also place a high value, and I'm quoting again, on retaining the town's traditional scale, historic character, and small town feel. What I find problematic about this design is that it looks like Anywhere USA. It looks like formulaic architecture for a Hannaford's grocery store. And I think our town would benefit from having something that had a little bit more distinctive architecture and not just lip service in paint colors, for instance, that refer to the Pickering House, one of our gems of historic architecture, and the brick of Town Hall. I think I completely understand the need for a grocery store here. and even for siting and for the stormwater runoff, but the design of the building, I think, really needs work. And one of my questions has to do with that roof line, and is that a parapet, as Mr. Webster asked? Is it a false front, or does the roof line extend completely up to what we're seeing on the design of that half a second floor, if you will? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. Okay.
I can answer the one technical question.
All right, go for it.
The cornice is what we call a gravel stop. It's about 6 inches off the bottom. The structural steel is pretty immense to span. And so that 18 feet, 3 or 4 feet of it is structure, ductwork, those types of things. And so that volume up top is roof structure. There is, maybe I should correct my comment, there is a little bit of parapet on the entry. You can kind of see the back side of it from other angles.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Randy, I think you have comments pretty much.
Just somewhat in closing.
Can you go over your timetable again?
Oh, yeah, okay. So the timetable that we're shooting for, and it's a little aggressive because, as Tavis said, we just get in there and are dealing with the ret wall in the back and so forth. But the timetable is that we're going to be coming to the board. Well, let's go in order. On June 7th, we'll be going to another TRC with the department heads to iron out some of the utility connections and other details with them. When's your meeting? The planning board meeting is what, June 13th that month, or whatever the Tuesday is?
June 6th is the boundary line adjustment.
Yeah, June 6th, so I'm 1 day behind. So
okay.
On June 6th, we'll be coming before the board with the lot line adjustment that I was talking with Vaughn about. Again, the lot line adjustment is based on if the site review application goes through, but that will include a raising of the white building, again, if it goes through. But we'll be coming before the board for approval on that. Then the 7th will be the TRC meeting, and then on June 20th, we have to submit on June 20th the formal package with all the engineering, any of the architectural stuff, to the planning department for the July, well, it would have been 4th, but it'd be July 11th planning board meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So that's the schedule currently, unless something comes up that kinks us, but that's what we're shooting for.
Okay. All right.
Again, that's the, should everything go right and it gets approved, they still got a building permit process that they're going to try to be working on in the interim so that so that some of those things are covered. What we're hoping is when we come back before the board, there won't be another sit down other than the TRC.
Right.
So we're hoping that when we come back before the board, maybe there can be just, discussion on some of the architectural features or whatever to get things as close as we can to an approval process. So that kind of segues into the last thing I wanted to say, and selfishly for me, because we got to submit the application. So we've talked about a couple different things tonight and how closely they meet regulations or maybe where they slightly fall short or whatever. We had this conversation before about written waivers submitted with the formal application versus trying to shoot from the hip during a meeting, which I don't want to do, and I don't think you guys would suggest that. So my question to the board is a simple one in a way, and that's that should we, after what you've heard tonight, should we, request written waivers for the 4 items in the event that the board feels that they fall short, or what's your thoughts on that? You understand my position?
Yeah, it's kind of hard for us to make a determination about that until we actually see the actual application.
Right, but I got to submit it before that, Kath.
No, I know, but I'm just speaking as a
I get
member.
it. Yeah, but you
right.
see where I'm at with that?
Yeah.
I don't want to show up and then that will kick us another month.
Right.
So I'm just asking the board for their thoughts on that, and that's yours. I'm leaning towards just submitting a blanket waiver form on those 4 items. I think we meet some of them, and we may come close to meeting all of them. But in the event we don't, then I will ask the board for a waiver for that will be voted on as part of the application process. I don't want to, kick it another month because we decide that a written waiver wasn't submitted with the application.
Yeah, right, yep.
Are you talking about waivers to the zoning ordinance or the site review?
No, to the
site review.
To the fact, to the items that were waivers, not variances.
Stormwater, lighting, architectural.
The stuff that has been applied to this application because it's under the site review regulations. So the planning board can waive those, and I'm not asking that necessarily because I think we're going to be meeting the stormwater rules. I think we can pretty closely meet the lighting other than with the existing situation. I think that we're very close with the landscaping, but not maybe 100%. We've done that before on other cases. And the reason would be, as we all know, existing situations, place burnt down, we're not coming to you with a vacant piece of land. We're trying to work within those parameters. That would be my explanation for the waivers, okay? And then the last one being the architectural standards, which will be up to the board whether or not they feel that the final, but at least I'll have it in my pocket. I just feel, given the constraints on the time frame, that's the only, that's the best way to do it. So I just wanted to talk with the board about that at the end.
Well, it's difficult for us as planning board members to comment on that because we have to vote on whether the waivers are granted or not.
I understand
but
that.
I think you should be working with Tavis to determine that, what waivers you might need.
And I did have a conversation with Tavis about it, and we talked, and we said, it'd probably be a good idea to at least ask the board that. Like I said, I'm leaning towards submitting them.
Yeah.
We don't have to act on them.
So why not work on resolving those issues?
Well, we will be, Vaughn. Absolutely. Yeah. I just think that landscaping in particular, I think there's not any way in this existing situation that we can comply 100%. We're going to get as close as we can. So I think that may be one where we have to ask for a waiver too. The architectural standards, I'm not 100% sure yet. I want to be relying on the architectural people on that. The stormwater one, I think in essence, an average, we do. The lighting, according to Tavis, I think we do, if you count the existing ones. So really the one in question would be, landscaping, given this situation, and we plan on having an enhanced landscape plan that we can provide the board, which again, will be based on the comments that you guys had tonight. The architectural part will be something that has to be worked out, but I just want to feel safe with having, a backup plan without extending the application.
As far as the architectural design guidelines.
Other standards.
As far as the architectural review guidelines standards, what the application form says is that you turn in elevations with a material list. So you don't need a waiver from that for the purposes of having a complete application. What might be a discussion is whether the board feels that they've been satisfied.
Right.
So with stormwater, it could be, here's the discussion, here's how we satisfy the standard. The board doesn't need a waiver for completion. It might be a waiver towards approval.
Right.
So if there's no way to do any screening or buffering or of any mechanicals, I mean, the north elevation doesn't show any of that stuff that we all know is going to be there. So it's hard to know whether you need a waiver for it or whether you're going to have, maybe Paul finds 5 feet somewhere and you can screen everything. I know he won't.
So if the waivers are a part of accepting the application and being able to go to the next stage, which is review the application,
correct,
then that's important.
Correct.
A lot of times the waivers are voted on as part of the approval.
Well, again, if you were saying, we want to put this orange box in the corner, we don't know what it's going to look like, that would be a waiver for the architectural design standards. and the board could accept it for the purposes of opening the hearing, and continue the hearing to a later date to evaluate completion.
Right.
So I think you have answers to all the questions, therefore it's arguable you have a complete application. So whether the board feels that it's complete enough for approval or some, that's why I don't like the word waiver, because waiver doesn't mean, oh, forget about it. Waiver can mean you were supposed to hit 110.5,
Right.
you hit 110. Or 30%, you hit 28%. So the board needs a waiver form filled out to modify that, and then they need to justify that if they grant said waiver. But I don't think you need waivers for completion based on what I've heard tonight. But that's, again, something the board has to consider in July.
Right, so okay, so if there are waivers for approval, then just because I submit them as part of the package, which we've done before, we don't have to act on certain ones if it's deemed moot.
Okay.
Correct.
That's correct.
Right.
It's just a little, some of them are a little subjective. I know that we've discussed the architectural standards and, you know, even the stormwater rules, other than John, it's not everybody understands completely. So, you know, I learned a lot during that. So I think we're there, but because they're subjective, Kathy, that was the reason for the question.
Yeah,
you
okay.
know? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you all for coming.
I'd like to request just a clarification because a lot of people have asked me why we are not, as our zoning requires, making this building come within 30 feet of the right-of-way. And I know there's a time
15 feet.
15 feet, sorry.
They have an existing building. Hunters has every right to go pull a building permit tomorrow to put back the exact footprint they have.
And how long do they have to do that?
1 year.
1 year.
Okay, I just wanted it to be public so that people will stop asking.
And then they have the ability to take the existing and expand it by 25%. So whether it was 2563.95 at one point, now it's 3,000. They're still under that 25%.
Right, and they have 1 year from fire or demolition? Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Is that to get the permit, or is
Yes.
that to get the?
All right, so we're all set then. Okay, thank
Yes,
you,
if it were
folks.
from the date of the fire, we're already pooched, yes. Or the building already is.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the Wolfeboro Waters shorefront regulations. And Rich, you're going to do that, right? Okay, just
Oh, I already, I was just going to talk to us.
Oh, okay, just before you get going, I just want everybody to know, folks, that I was a member of the committee that put these regulations together. So I just wanted everyone to know that, so. Okay, go ahead.
I'm also a member of that committee.
And so was I. And I think John Thurston was too.
No, I'm talking about the Wolfeboro Waters.
Oh, I thought you were
Wolfeboro
talking
Waters
about
Committee, sorry.
the shorefront.
No, well, yes, that's what we're talking about is the shorefront, but I worked with the Wolfeboro Waters Committee to develop these.
So what I have to say is, actually, I was surprised to find this on the agenda tonight because, as you know, Kathy, the Wolfeboro Waters was invited to.
Yeah, this is it.
This is your hearing. This is your work session.
No, this is you're presenting it to the planning board.
Okay, so if bear with me for a second, because my impression was that at some point in the future you were going to have some work sessions, some review of this particular regulation.
That's why you're here, to explain the changes.
Yeah, as I understood it, Wolfeboro Waters had some comments and suggestions to the shorefront residential. There was going to be a presentation of those comments and suggestions, which is tonight, and then the board could take any or all and then schedule work sessions, et cetera, towards making changes that would go to warrant article in the future.
Perfectly fine. Okay. I thought we were going to weigh in as part of a broader, maybe review and lots of other input.
No, this is, what I was thinking was that this is an opportunity for you to explain why we're making some of these changes, or why you're suggesting that we make some of these changes, and then...
Sure.
Yeah,
okay.
And the board did get copies of everything that you'll be referring to at the last meeting.
Right. So what I'm working on is the edited version, the version that actually shows our proposed changes. I'm assuming you're doing the same thing. So it's not as if Wolfeboro Waters anticipated or is proposing a total revamping of this zoning district. We had some very specific recommendations, and if you'll bear with me, we can go through them, and I'll be glad to explain what the thinking was. So the first part is 17566 special exception uses, or actually 67, I'm sorry, shorefront lot improvement standards, A1, and if you're looking at the edited copy, impervious surface limitations. So what we proposed was adding a plan or survey prepared by a professional engineer is required to establish the percentage of impervious coverage on a lot. And the thinking there is that without that, the question in our mind was, who in fact determines when someone comes before this board with a proposal for developing a lot, and the board is given an estimate or a figure for how much of the lot is actually impervious, where does that number come from? And that's the question. And so the suggestion is that we spell out what the source of that figure could be, rather than leaving it to the applicant to tell you what the impervious cover is. Below that section, one thing we are suggesting is in the original or in the current version, subsection A of that, no greater than 30% of the area of a lot within the protected shoreland may be composed of impervious surface. Just a housekeeping kind of thing. We're suggesting that go to the bottom of these conditions, that it be the final statement about the limitations on impervious surface. So when I'm referring to B, it would become A. If a homeowner or developer proposes a project that will result in a lot coverage from 15% to 20% inclusive, okay, just to spell out what the range is a little bit more clearly, at least one stormwater management system shall be implemented and properly maintained in the proposed development. This system may include, but is not limited to, rain gardens, infiltration trenches, pervious driveways, dry wells, etc. Maintenance, and we're proposing an addition here, a requirement for maintenance.
Where are you?
And I'll read it.
Where are you, Rich?
We're in what would be 17567.
I know, I have it.
A1B. So at the end of what you now would have seen as B, maintenance reports shall be submitted 5 years after installation of a stormwater management system, and then every 5 years subsequent. Failure to provide such a report will be addressed by the town's code enforcement officer. I think the thinking here is something that we've learned from larger projects, stormwater management plans, where we've gone out and done fairly large implementations of stormwater control measures. And the first thing the engineers will tell you when you put some of these, sometimes very costly projects in place is, if this isn't maintained, within 4, 5, 6 years, it's going to be useless. You've wasted your time and your money. And so what we're requiring here is that, in fact, people sites that need to implement stormwater management plans document to the town that they are, in fact, doing maintenance on them and keeping them working. Next section, and again, I hope you're following along on the edited copy. What was Section D in the original or in the current proposal? We are recommending that that come out entirely. It's basically a get out of jail free card that negates a lot of the other elements in these regulations. The way it reads right now is any project proposing a decrease or no change in impervious coverage shall not be required to provide a professionally engineered stormwater management plan, provided that the decrease in coverage produces a minimum of 1% reduction in the lot coverage within 250 feet of the reference line. The initial condition, the one that we propose moving, says basically no greater than 30% of the area of a lot within the protected shoreland may be composed of impervious surfaces. And then we install this section, which basically says it can be any level of impervious cover, but as long as you reduce it by what you say is 1%, you get a get out of jail free card. You don't have to do a stormwater management plan. And I guess the question for us to ask would be, what's the advantage to the town to allowing that kind of thing? I can certainly see what the advantage is to the applicant, to somebody doing the development. All they have to do is do some minimal reduction in impervious cover, and then all of a sudden they don't have to do what everybody else has to do, over 30%. Or under 30%, and that is put together a stormwater management plan. The question is, what's the public interest in having this kind of provision in there? Our recommendation is that it be taken out. That puts all the more emphasis on what was Section A. No greater than 30% of the area of a lot within the protected shoreland may be composed of impervious surfaces. With Section D in place, you certainly do allow that. You can allow almost any amount of impervious cover. Section E, all proposed stormwater management systems must be verified by means of photographic documentation. It's just a wording change, just to spell out what those changes are. Does it make sense to you, Kathy, if people have questions or want to discuss something, that they do it as we're going?
Sure.
Rather than
does anybody have any questions thus far?
Yeah,
I
Peter.
have a comment about your maintaining these systems, and that they have to make a statement which says that they're maintaining it. Who is documenting that? And you said you wanted to have an engineer or somebody talk about the increase in permeable surface. It would make sense to have a similar mention of some professional person making a statement rather than just the person saying, yeah, I did it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see where you're going with it. I guess as we looked at it, we were maybe a little bit more trusting, and in saying that, you know, if somebody, I guess we assume that if people go to the trouble of filling out a form and telling the town they've maintained their stormwater control measures, that we would take their word for it, the town would take their word for it.
The new owner may not have such a strong feeling for it.
I agree. I mean, I'm just saying that's the way we saw it. If you wanted to make a case that needed to be documented in some more formal way, I understand where you're going with it. I think we need to understand we would be imposing another requirement on the property owner that we may or may not want to do. But yeah, so I understand your point.
I interpreted that as meaning somebody would produce a receipt from the person who had done the maintenance work.
Oh, okay. I don't know that was intended to be implied in there. Again, it's you folks write these things, and you may well want to put something more formal in there. I wouldn't rely on it being implied. I would not have read that into this thing. I would read this as, you tell us you did it, and we'll accept that. If the board felt that, to me, the important thing is that there is a requirement for confirming that the work is being done. If you want that confirmation to be more formal than this wording implies, that's your decision to make. Okay?
Yep.
All right. So
to that point, when somebody comes to us for an application and the conditions say this is supposed to be taken care of, isn't our codes officer and our planner overseeing that part of the conditions in an application?
Well, we're giving the homeowner the responsibility for turning it in to the code or to the planning office. That's what the point of this is.
So what's currently done, and no one has asked how a permit actually goes through the process. If someone is coming in and proposing a project that is between 15 and 20%, the plan goes nowhere until there's a maintenance plan and a schedule for how it goes. Touching on E, where Rich was starting to go about the photographic evidence, my recommendation to the board last year that didn't make it through the voters was to scrap the photographic evidence because that doesn't do anything. The original proposal last year was to require either an on-site engineer verify installation, whether it's all the layers of gravel or the structure itself or all of the above, or the building inspector observe that. So the people that frequently turn in plans will put together a cross-section of the glorified French drain or the infiltration basin or the rain garden, what have you, and then that I don't let it go past me without a maintenance schedule. So functionally what happens is, because that is then tied to a building permit, that's a condition of their occupancy of their home when they're done. What isn't happening is a 5-year checkup or what have you later. However, if there is later to be a runoff problem from a property, or someone saying, hey, there's more water coming off this property than there ever was, the first thing we're going to ask for is a copy of their maintenance plan that they agreed to with the application. So if we were, going in how to implement some of these changes, my suggestion, taking off from what Peter said, was yes, it should be an engineer doing it. It should be a deed restriction that gets recorded on the property so that all subsequent owners know what they're literally buying into. And that they have a contact person. That's how those are being addressed right now.
Okay.
So, Tavis, from what I hear you saying, then the enforcement, as it were, would be reactive rather than proactive, correct?
Correct. And one of the benefits of that is you can have all the engineers in the world saying, yep, they vacuumed the porous pavement, and it's still creating a problem. great, you maintained it, but you're still not addressing what it was originally designed for, so there's still enforcement ability there.
Okay, why don't you
All
go
right.
ahead?
Okay, very good. The next proposed change, I'll just describe it. It's just the diameter or caliper table describing the requirements for trees and shrubs. And this is just a technical change in the notation, I think is probably a notation change, which uses fairly standard greater than, less than, equal to changes. It's just a question of what you think is clearer.
So I remember this particular instance coming in front of us when Rob was the planner and John Rourke brought up the question whether or not the caliper size, because it said 1 to 3 and 3 to 6, and John Rourke said, shouldn't it be greater than 3 at the time? So what do we need to do to make it more clear?
Well, our proposal is 1 to 3, right? Then greater than 3, and up to or equal to or less than 6, okay? And then greater than 6, and equal to or less than 12 inches, and then greater than 12 inches. So I think the notation itself, it's a question if you find notation like this illuminating or confusing, you know, and I don't know how people come at that. The notation, I think, is very specific. Equal to or less than means, you know, equal to or less than. And so there should be no confusion with the notation unless you just don't find this thing clear enough.
So I'm going to throw a curveball. So where are you measuring your caliper size? Up the tree 12 inches from the base or at the base? Because it can vary widely.
DBH. I think it actually says it 4
does
feet.
say
It
that
actually
right
says
right
up
here.
above, John, right in the section right above the table, measured at 4.5 feet, is what it says. Was that your question? Okay, yeah.
And yes, it's at time of install, not at maturity.
Okay, on to dead or diseased trees.
Yeah. And Tavis will know because this has come up, and Kathy will remember that this has come up in discussions in Wolfeboro Waters Committee because there's a specific site that one particular person has a concern with. And so what we tried to do is clarify the conditions under which somebody can say, you know, my waterfront had a lot of diseased trees on it, and that's why they're gone. And so we tried to make the language a little bit clearer about that. For example, so the way it reads now, or we would propose that it read, is dead, terminally diseased, right? Just the fact that it's not going to survive, or structurally unsafe trees, shrubs and ground cover shall not be included in scoring. And then there's an additional sentence that says, if any of these terminally diseased or structurally unsafe trees are removed, the property must still conform to the established natural woodlands buffer standards established by this ordinance.
Yeah, I have a question on that. Suppose the property did not meet the requirements to begin with.
Well, I think you're asking an enforcement question, which is, you know,
Well,
I'm not
no.
in a position to
No,
answer.
the question is, it says if any of these trees are removed, the property must still conform to the established natural woodlands. So if you have a tree that's about to fall on your house, but you don't meet the proper scoring, then how does this work?
Well, I think aren't you obligated to replace any, if you make changes that bring you under, and Tavis may be able to explain, you know, respond to this, but my understanding would be if you do take some action that brings you below the standards set, that you are obligated to restore those,
No.
your frontage. That is not the case?
Dead and diseased currently do not count towards those totals. I mean, that's the very paragraph you're reading. Dead and diseased trees shall not count towards the point system total. So,
Okay.
I mean, yes, the Wolfeboro Waters language doesn't make sense for the point Roger's just saying. You had one tree, it was determined to be dead and or terminally diseased, whatever that's to mean to someone. Does that mean without treatment, or after 5 courses it's still terminal and therefore you can remove it? I'm not poking fun, these are the questions I get regularly.
Yeah.
So then if that tree is removed and it was the only tree on the lot, do you then have to meet the 50 or the 25-point grid score? Because remember, the only spot the planting counts is in the 50 feet. It's not 200 feet.
Right.
Right.
But it says it must still conform, but if it didn't conform to begin with.
Well, that's why section D says if you remove 1%, you don't have to comply. Because if you're at 35% and you propose redoing the whole site and you're still at 35, you still don't have to do anything. Because it's existing non-conforming, you don't have to trigger. That's where paragraph D came from with removing 1%. But I understand there's work to do there, and I can work through real-world examples of that. As far as the dead or terminally diseased or structurally unsafe, you're referring to the tree itself, it's structurally unsafe of and behold itself, or it's unsafe towards a structure?
No, the tree itself, I would read this to mean that the tree itself is in danger of falling or dropping branches or whatever, however you might see the danger from its condition. It's a reference to the condition of the tree.
Okay. Because the other one is a dangerous tree. We haven't touched on dangerous yet. That's perhaps one of the more subjective terms. Is it? So recently there was a project on Clark Road where an individual had an existing shed and was proposing to replace the existing shed. In order to replace it correctly, it had to have a foundation. And they said, well, once we put the foundation in, these trees are going to be dangerous. And I said, yes, but you are causing the situation for those trees to be dangerous. So I don't think you meet the threshold. So they then went out and hired a forester and said, here's how the tree is structurally unsafe for itself. Here's how it is otherwise impaired. I believe it meets the section. So that's some of the runaround we do.
Right. I mean, we're obviously not going to write the regulation tonight. I think this is meant to simply point, and again, Tavis, you'll remember from the discussions in the committee meetings, that it's trying to deal in some reasonable but flexible way with a condition where somebody who's less than forthcoming takes advantage of the language of the ordinance to simply remove things they don't want in their property, in their view, perhaps. And so it's an attempt to point in the direction of language that might hold them a little bit more accountable. But if it's not perfect, I think I accept that.
You know, I know exactly what you are trying to address, and it does need to be addressed because apparently all trees in Wolfeboro are diseased.
So when you fill out
both extremes of the situation, but yeah.
When somebody's filling out an application, they're signifying the trees that are alive so that they can get the points on their plan. Is that correct?
Yes.
So when they see a dead or dying diseased tree, they're not making a special notation of that being a valuable tree, and so therefore it's not counting in their numbers.
Correct. But they also get a very stern visit from me when there's word that trees have been cut that weren't indicated on the plan as to be removed. And there's a bunch of back checking to see, was it diseased, was it dangerous, was it? And if they can't justify that, there is a replanting schedule.
So if I was at a place and I knew that somebody cut down 10 King's Pines and they just did it willy-nilly, what's the course of action? A neighbor has to complain and go to you?
Yeah.
It depends on what we're talking about.
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at, which he's getting at. So somebody cuts the dead or dying tree down, what happens?
The way the regulation's currently worded, it's irrelevant if it's dead or dying or diseased.
So if he makes the change, what's going to happen then? Who's gonna know about it?
Trust me, when a tree falls in Wolfeboro, everybody hears it. I'm not trying to belittle the question. If people don't say, hey, my neighbor just cut down trees, I'm concerned, how is anyone going to know about it?
Well, I'm just trying to understand the course of action.
Once it's known, you write a letter, you get on the property, you see where the trees are. How are they documented to be dead, diseased, or dangerous? If they're not, then they have to do a replant.
So if the tree is gone, how do you determine if it's dead or diseased or dying at that point?
Kind of on them to prove that, isn't it? And if they can't prove it, they got to replant.
Okay.
But what's happening is there are occasions where there are very large trees going out and 3-inch trees going in. That's another thing for the board to contemplate. But I also understand that most people are not going to be willing to replace a 24-inch pine tree. So.
Okay, why don't you keep going, Rich?
Okay. All right. The next section is, again, the second table, diameter or caliper. Again, the notation has just been changed. Again, and you'll need to decide whether the notation is better or worse or neither. Above that, however, there's C2. What we did was we added wording from section D above the previous table, which again just spells out how the caliper is to be measured, at what height. So it wasn't in there before. We just brought it forward and put it in there. Below the table, that paragraph just has a little bit of wordsmithing. There's nothing technically different about it. Section C6 is just a repeat of the section we just had the fairly long conversation about, with dead, terminally diseased, or structurally unsafe trees. Okay, so whatever decisions you make about the previous section, you'll want to apply here. Section D below, lot redevelopment. Any property owner who wishes to redevelop a property on which a pre-existing non-conforming primary structure exists shall submit a plan prepared by a professional engineer showing the following. So the wording that's new there is a plan prepared by a professional engineer. And so it just formalizes the process a little bit more. And that, I believe, is the extent of the proposals.
Okay, so the next step is to put this on a work session agenda and go through it. And we'll let Rich know when we're going to be doing that so he can be here.
Sure.
And but I mean, the reason this came about, when we worked on the stormwater drainage, we got that all straightened out, and everybody said, well, okay, well, residents. And we said, no, this is just for commercial. And but we said we needed to work with the residential section a little bit more because there were still some inconsistencies. So that's how we got started.
Right.
And so this is really being presented to you for their thoughts or our thoughts, to then take it and have some discussions, find out a little bit more about how the shorefront is developed. And there were several of us, Peter and Vaughn and John and I were on the shorefront when we put those regulations together a number of years ago. So anyway, that'll be the next step. And Tavis is going to let us know when we can fit this in.
My suggestion is the board members look at the draft that Rich went through and look at the existing regulations, throw questions at me. How does this work? How has this been working? And then the board come up with work session topics. I don't know if you want to try and redo the whole thing in a shot or what, but
yeah,
we've got time.
Well, it's probably going to take two or three meetings, I would think.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much, Rich. Sorry you had to stick around for so long, but. Okay, let's see. The rules of procedure, do you want to keep going on that, or it's 9:15?
Just to let the board know what's in the draft, I took the code of ethics as the board discussed it at the last meeting. I took out the pronouns. I fixed everything the board discussed. Maybe this goes on for a future work session meeting to see when the board wants to have its.
Okay, well, was everybody comfortable with this, with the things that have been added? Because if they are, then this would be meeting number 1, right? Right? No?
I wasn't very comfortable with the pronouns. I think that the selectmen should make a universal change with all the documentation. I don't think that the planning board should be the one to go out and make the change right off the bat if that's not going to be the policy in the town. So that's where I come from on that one.
So maybe since it's 9:15, we just leave it for comment and people can email Kathy or me and see what changes are to discuss at the next meeting.
Okay, other than the pronouns, is everybody comfortable with the rest of it?
Yeah, I only have one comment, a grammar thing really. In the second paragraph under Code of Ethics for Planning Board members, where it says code, it reads members of the Town of Wolfeboro Planning Board members. So one of those members should be removed.
Yeah, the second one after board should be removed.
Okay, is that substantial or not?
I don't think so, no.
No, I don't think it's substantial.
Yeah, okay, all right.
I think that's actually the way it was written originally, so.
I think that the Code of Ethics and the Rules of Procedure should be separate documents. They really are, in the sense that the Rules of Procedure tell the public and the planning board how meetings are going to be run, and the Code of Ethics basically tells the planning board members how they are to behave. And they're not really the same thing.
Yeah, I would agree with Roger's comment.
How does everybody else feel? Okay.
The way this is written on the first page is it says authority first, and then it basically says that the Code of Ethics is part of the Rules of Procedure. So is it or is it not?
But they're not really rules of procedure. They're a code of ethics.
I think Julie's comment is that the Code of Ethics is a part of the Rules of Procedure rather than a separate document.
It is now.
I think it should be a separate document.
Well, yeah, I think at the last meeting we
I know, but I looked
include it, but that's okay.
Before me.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, so it looks like.
Put them on for a future work session.
Yeah,
It's
but
two separate
they
documents.
want them separate. That's the.
I don't know. I mean, I understand John's point. I don't know if what the selectmen do tells the planning board what they need to do. I think you can have separate. I understand that there should be a policy, but I don't know if the selectmen are going to adopt a policy. And for example, I still feel uncomfortable referring to Linda Murray as a selectman. She appears okay with it.
But that's her
And I
title.
know the statute allows it to be.
She said that at the training session that she was not comfortable with it. She refers to herself as the chair.
Okay.
So it's fine, but she is a
So
select
there is
man.
some statutory flexibility in what selectmen refer
Right.
to themselves as, but I don't know if that translates with the same
Okay, well,
levity
it
in the
got
pronouns.
changed because we made quite a issue out of it last time.
Certainly did.
And I think the planning board should adopt its code of ethics. It's not up to the selectmen to do that.
Yeah, right. Well, we are adopting it. Yeah, okay. That's
So I'll pull them apart, future work session, enough said.
okay. All right, very good. Okay, we'll hold off on the roadway design and public comment. Anybody want to make a comment?
I'd like to thank Rich Massey, Ann Blodgett. I'd like to thank Rich Massey and the Wolfeboro Waters Group for protecting our precious natural resources. After all, it's in the master plan. Tavis, I have a question. What is the ringing going on?
Inadvertently, the emergency phone line from the elevator was disconnected, which puts the elevator in a trouble code.
It rang all the way through the Water Summit on Saturday. Some people were losing their minds.
Some of us have been listening to this since 9 a.m. on Friday. Yes, I have lost my mind. I agree.
All right, so then you and I are in the same club.
Ongoing tug of war between the phone company and the elevator company as to who's in the wrong. So,
And those of you who don't hear it, go for a hearing test.
there it goes.
Every 42 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Suzanne Ryan. Once again, Class 6 roads, dead-end roads, premature and scattered growth. When are we going to take the bull by the horns and do something about a regulation that controls this? I was just trying to look up what we allow for the length of a dead-end road. Something in my mind says 1,200 feet, but I don't know what it is.
It's whatever the longest hose was when they wrote the regulation.
It's what?
It's the length of the longest hose when they wrote the regulation.
Well, we need to come up with some sort of a standard. Some towns go by every house lot is 150 feet frontage, so you allow so many house lots, gives you a length of road. There's many ways of going about it, but little by little, these approvals of Class 6 road is going to end up causing a problem. And at some point, somebody's going to say, no, we're going to stop. Just like you're dealing with shorefront regulations and runoff and stuff. At some point, you got to say to people, you can't be doing that anymore. There's a reason for Class 6 roads. They were mostly back lots and farm roads and wood lots, and not every lot in the town of Wolfeboro in the state of New Hampshire is a buildable lot. Some lots just can't be built upon for various reasons. I'd like to see that put on your work list.
Well, there's a state law that says you can't build on town roads. So that should probably, if you want, that should be emphasized to the selectmen.
I can't hear a word you're saying, but that's okay. I'll go home and watch it.
Well, just in case the video didn't hear it, there's a state law that says you cannot issue a building permit on a Class 6 road. So tonight's request was a waiver.
Tavis, you can talk to me till you're blue in the face about Class 6 roads. I've been going around with the town on this for more than a half a dozen years.
Could you please talk to us?
And Kathy knows I've been in talking about Class 6 roads and the detriment, the effect that I feel that it has on the town and backlands and so forth. And there's plenty written on it. I suggest you borrow the book in Tavis's office. It's called Knowing the Roads.
A Hard Road to Travel? Is that
Hard Road Traveled. You'll all get a wonderful education about Class 6 roads and pathways and so forth. Take some time to read it, and you'll see why it's not a good idea to open up these Class 6 roads. Keep them for our trails and our walking trails and our bicycles and stuff like that, and stop building houses on them. You are going to be sorry. I won't be here to see it, and none of us will, but we'll be sorry as a town.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay. Just on other issues, if anybody else has any, but we had an invitation from the Heritage Committee.
Sorry, I meant to say that.
Yeah.
On the 24th of May, Wednesday, we are having Heritage Awards at the Village Players Meeting House. I think there are 6 or 7 awards that will be given out to meaningful restoration or reuse or redevelopment of some historic buildings in town that are being recognized.
Vaughn, what time is that happening?
Doors open at 5:30. I think
it's
know.
either
It's on the website.
5:30 or 5:15.
I think it's 5:30, and I think the presentation starts at 6:15.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, food and beverages. Yeah.
Oh, okay, and then on another issue, Roger is interested in being on the conservation subdivision. Why are you looking at me like that? And I was just, I think you and Vaughn had said that you would work on the, and so Roger would like to be part of that also. And we had talked about having a housing meeting in July or August. You still want to do that, folks? Because if we do, we need to put some thought into it. And it would be housing and probably, I think we talked about short-term rentals as being part of that. So
yes.
Still want to do that? Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay.
So,
yes, sure. Yes, you can.
Because I also want to stress that the public is welcome, but RSVPs are needed. The doors open at 5:30. Ceremony begins at 6:15. So RSVP to, wait a minute.
And that was May 24th?
yes.
Yes.
RSVP to, this is on our Facebook, Heritage Commission Facebook page, Heritage Commission at wolfeboro.nh.us.
And we also have a hard copy, don't we? So anyway, thanks, Ann. Okay.
So, as far as the housing summit, if you want to call it that, I would suggest interested members email me, and then we'll start coordinating a schedule. Just so you're not emailing each other, just email me and say, yes, I'm interested, and I'll start pulling that list together and see where that goes.
Okay, all right, very good. Anybody else have anything? Yeah, go ahead.
Just want to share, apparently attendance at the LRPC meetings is fruitful because I've recently been appointed to their executive committee for the remainder of an unexpired term. Pat myself on the back a little bit until I went to the meeting, but it was educational. I'll be following up with information on the LRPC annual meeting once that gets formalized, in case people want to attend. And I have met with the Guilford and Meredith planners because we'll be doing a joint presentation on this isn't the official title, but our town's experience with short-term rental and town meeting on June 2nd. So,
at the planners conference.
The Planning Association.
Yeah, right, okay.
In addition to that, on the 24th, ironically enough, I will be, Jason Durant's the code official, and I will be going over to NHMA for a regional planning commissioners educational forum on tiny houses in New Hampshire.
And what kind of houses?
Tiny houses.
Oh, tiny.
Yeah.
Which are not houses on wheels. They're just really small houses.
Well, for most of New Hampshire, it's tiny houses on wheels.
Is
but
it? Yeah.
That's what people are afraid of, yes. Towns that have minimum lot size or minimum house sizes don't worry about it, but Wolfeboro does not have a minimum house size. So that's it.
Okay, all right.
Russ Pond I finally have the letter of approval for the 319 funds for the North Inlet work. So that's moving forward.
Okay, minutes of May 2nd.
So moved.
Okay, motion has been made, and I'll second it. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Abstain.
Opposed? Oh, okay, Peter abstained.
And Vaughn, yeah.
Yeah, oh, okay, and Vaughn too. Okay, all right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and meeting adjourned. I'll make that motion.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Okay, all right, thank you very much, folks.